A major legal win for Indian professionals seeking opportunities in the United States. A federal judge in Boston has struck down the Trump administration's proposed $100,000 fee on new H-1B visa applications, calling it an unauthorized tax imposed without Congress's delegation. Now, the ruling, siding with a coalition of 20 states, could reshape how the executive branch attempts to change immigration policy and signals a judicial check on tools aimed at protecting U.S. workers. Well, to unpack more on this, we are being joined by Jayant Krishna, Senior Fellow, Center for Strategic and International Studies, live from New Delhi. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Jayant Krishna, for joining us today.
A pleasure.
Right, I'll just dive right into it. The U.S. judge said the fees amounted to an unauthorized tax. So how could this legal reasoning reshape future executive attempts to change immigration policy without a Congress delegation?
See, one thing is very clear that, which I've been telling time and again to various TV channels, that, by giving a large number of H-1B visas to India, US was not obliging India. Actually, so many Indians were meeting the skills deficit the US faces in lots of areas like technology, engineering, healthcare, and so on and so forth. So actually, Indians were doing a fabulous job of meeting the skills deficit in the US. And also, by Indians going there in such large numbers and working for the US entities, we were also providing them some kind of a cost arbitrage advantage, the technology companies in the US and so on and so forth, they were globally competitive and a very large component of that, promise that they deliver is because of a relatively lesser expensive Indians coming there and working on H-1B visas, right? So I think US needs Indians far more than, what Indians need to go and work in the US. So I think this is a welcome step. The US federal judge Leo Sorokin has blocked this $100,000 H-1B visa application fee and calling it to be unlawful, and it is some kind of a tax. It is said, without the approval of the Congress. So I think it will be a major relief for Indian professionals, who will have, who will have a better case to go to the US and work there. And also the US companies, the employers, who are facing this prohibitive cost for hiring highly skilled talent, even India's technology companies, if you look at technology companies, the average compensation that, the engineers who are going on H-1B visa and working in the US used to be anywhere between $80,000 to, $120,000 to $140,000, right? And almost equivalent to the annual compensation was this prohibitive H-1B visa fee that was levied, and also a lot of technology, a lot of innovation, a lot of healthcare companies in the US will benefit. Let's also not forget another category, which though not directly impacted by H-1B visas, curtailment in numbers or levying a heavy fee, are the US universities. Most US universities that you go to, anywhere between 30% to 45% of their strength comes from India, right? So many students, Indian students go there and study there. And their business case was getting negated if they do not get H-1B visas after finishing their education and work there. So US universities, were going to suffer big time if this, prohibitive fee of $100,000 was to continue. So I think, to my mind, it's a win-win for both the countries. I only hope and pray that the Trump administration does not go to the court again to repeal this blocking of application fee. That's my wish.
Right, and Mr. Jayant Krishna, like nearly 3/4 of H-1B approvals come from India. I'll just add into what you have given with adding in like more numbers to it. 73% in financial year 2023 per Pew's research. It has been said, and 71% in financial year 2024 per USCIS. So economically, how will this decision affect both the nation? Can we get deeper into this?
See, if you look at the total number of H-1B visa holders in the US right now, they are about 7 to 8 lakh, which is 700,000 to 800,000 people in different categories, and not just Indians, from all over the world. they are the beneficiaries of at any point of time, at a given point of time, are beneficiaries of H-1B visa, and 70% of them happen to be Indians. If you look at the year 2025, by the way, this prohibitive application fee of $100,000 was levied in September last year. And if you look at the 2025 data, Indians who got H-1B visa were about 2.84 lakh, as many approvals came for Indians, right? So I think once this happens, it will give a lot of relief from the heavy cost burden which was being levied, and largely this burden would not have come on individuals, but on companies which would have paid that application fee, which is much small today, just about, I mean, before this levy was imposed, which was just about a few thousand dollars, right? Also, it will make stable hiring. U.S. companies and Indian companies working abroad will have access to talent much more seamlessly. And in the long run, it will also boost U.S. innovation. A lot of teams, including in AI, a lot of development teams which are there in the U.S. At the back end, there are a lot of Indian companies which go and Indians, which go and work there. So I think in various areas of innovation, the importance of Indians going there on H-1B visa and working there for U.S. tech giants and other area, powerhouses, will get a boost if this blocking of $100,000 worth of fee eventually sees the light of the day. And as I said, it will also be a huge business case for U.S. universities to remain viable, which was which their viability had come to a danger because Indians were finding that if they can't work in the U.S. And avail H-1B visas and later green cards, then their very business case of studying in the U.S. was getting weakened. So I think it's as I said, it's a win-win for everybody, and I hope wise sense would prevail and Trump administration would not repeal this judgment. And if that's the case, it'll be a huge boost to our bilateral relationship.
Right, Mr. Krishna, we all know visa holders send money back home, and I have some numbers here just to get our viewers a gist of what I'm about to ask you. Now, reports show the US contributes roughly 30% of India's, remittances, about $38 billion annually, and H-1B holders drive 40 to 45% of that, roughly $17 billion. Now, had the $100,000 fee been implemented, analysts estimate 30,000 fewer first-year H-1Bs in 2026, 2027, costing India nearly $450 million in lost remittances this year. So, what does blocking this fee means for US-India labor ties, trades, and the flow of human capital over the next years?
I think it will be a huge boost to the US-India labor ties, and not just the labor ties, the overall bilateral relationship, the overall economic ties between our two countries would surely look upwards. And with that, and with the trade pact being around the corner, I think these two developments will go a long way in strengthening US-India, not just the labor ties, not just the talent availability pipeline, but overall economy as such. It will also eventually give a boost to the FDI coming to India, because when American companies invest in India, they also feel at some stage, because of the entire supply chain, manufacturing supply chain spanning the two countries, some of them Indians will have to go back to the US and work under H-1B visas. So I think from every perspective, it will get a boost. And as you rightly said, remittance by Indians who are working under H-1B visas in the US. And there was a huge threat of those remittances coming to India coming down. I think that will also get arrested as those numbers would look upwards, or at least stable, and the reluctance of companies to pay such a hefty visa fee would reduce, and more and more Indians, or at least as many as they were going before this September 2025 Trump administration's decision to levy such a hefty fee. I think we'll go back to the earlier levels and more Indians will get the opportunity, more US companies will be benefited, and and the remittances coming to India from the Indians working in the US will also remain at the same level or perhaps go up, which is very, very important at this point of time.
Right, Mr. Krishna. Beyond immediate hiring costs, what downstream effects like university recruiting, which you just mentioned in like your previous answers, medical staffing, for example, research collaboration, will be the most visible to Indian professions and students in the short term who are looking for H-1B visas?
So I think a lot of Indians who go and study in the U.S. universities. Many of them are in science and technology areas, doctors, engineers. And many of them eventually, I mean, their parents, pay through their nose and leverage their life savings for the child to go and study in the U.S. Right. So once this route reopens and this hefty fee disappears, then more their numbers will keep on going there, and the business case for Indians to study in the US will continue to be as good as it used to be before this September 2025 decision by the Trump administration. So I think I think it's going to be good, and because US universities which had started facing the onslaught of fewer number of Indians going there, will also to study there and make a career there, will also be corrected once this fee goes. Because when Indians go there and study there, they don't look at just the 3-year or 4-year or 2-year degree. They look at a larger time lifespan where they could recover such a hefty fee they pay to the universities by working there. I think. I only hope that there's no repeal, as I said earlier, by the Trump administration against this ruling, because more and more states are also almost up in arms and not agreeing to this hefty visa fee. So I essentially see it as a win-win for everybody. I hope Trump administration also sees it the same way.
Right, and before we wrap up the whole segment, I just have to ask you one last question. Like, if the administration appeals, what realistic timeline and practical uncertainties should Indian applicants and current H-1B holders expect, and how might that uncertainty itself affect migration flows?
I think if they repeal, they'll repeal it right now. They won't wait for it. Because they would like if at all they decide to repeal, they won't like to waste more time, because once the application fee is withdrawn and the court order is implemented, then giving it a lot of time would not be the right thing. Now, how soon their repeal will be early, how soon it will be heard in the court, it is anybody's guess. It's very, very difficult to say under the US legal system. And if it is the U.S. administration is successful in doing that, then we'll be back to square one, and same situation which became operative in September 2025 will come back again. But I hope he'll be counseled by many in the government, by technology companies, by healthcare institutions, hospitals, research institutions, innovators. I'm sure they'll all lobby with the Trump administration that they should not repeal and let this court decision blocking this $100,000 worth of H-1B visa application fee to remain and status quo restored before September 2025. So I think time frame, it's very, very difficult for anybody to guess, but I presume it will not. I hope the wise sense would prevail and it will not get repealed.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Jain Krishna, for breaking down this landmark ruling and its implications for Indian professionals, US employers, and the broader immigration landscape. But the decision is clear, but the real impact remains to be seen. If the administration appeals, the timeline and final outcomes could still shift hiring plans and migration flows. Until then, thank you so much for joining us today and getting your insights on the same.
Pleasure.
Until then, Indian talent retains a critical pathway to US opportunities. We'll have to wait and watch for the same.